Welcome to Eventualists, Real Stories, Eventual Experiences, a new Meetings Today podcast for tomorrow's talent and today's leaders, co-hosted by me, Taylor Smith.
And me, Hannah Elston. The Eventualist sheds light on the unexpected realities of life as a business events industry professional. And today we're excited to welcome our next guest to the podcast. But before we do, Taylor, I think it's important that we have a little flashback to our latest episode that we did with Maya. And for anyone that missed it, we talked about keeping track of our little wins. So obviously it's important that we practice what we preach. Taylor, I want to know, what's a little win that you're celebrating recently?
This is a good question because I think I could do better at practicing what we preached here personally. But I was thinking about it this morning, and I think my little win that I've been celebrating is I've been a really good dog mom these past couple weeks. My little Romeo, who, if you don't know about Romeo, then I don't know where you've been, because he's all I talk about and write about and everything. He's my whole life. But he has not been feeling too hot these past couple weeks, and it looks like he's finally turned the corner. And I've been up till like 4 a.m. some nights with him. You know, it's scary. He's like my baby. It was very kind of eye-opening for me because I definitely usually celebrate little wins related to my career. But I took a step back and I was like, you know what? Life goes on behind these screens and behind meetings today. And I definitely have had to prioritize life outside of work a little bit these past couple weeks. And that alone was tough. So that's my little win. Hannah, what about you?
Taylor, I mean, you say a little win. That's actually a really big win. It's a huge responsibility having a pet and then having to look after poor Romeo and staying up till 4 a.m. I would not discredit that as a little win. And, you know, Maya was also saying that we need to advocate for ourselves and our wins. So appreciate that for how big it actually is, I would say.
Thank you.
My little win isn't even really my own, but I was going to say, obviously, England making it to the quarterfinals for the World Cup. Very exciting. And my other little win is that I haven't melted yet in this UK heat wave. If anyone's watching the video clip of this, you might see my hair moving around. That's because I have a little fan that is keeping me sane for the duration of this call. But that's what I'm going to say are my little wins so far this week.
I think not melting in 86-degree heat inside your house is definitely a win, if you have to ask me. I could not survive that, so props to you.
Thank you. It involves a lot of cold glasses of Pinot Grigio, but you got to do what you got to do to survive, right?
Always, always. That's a necessity.
Now, Taylor, why don't we hear from our next guest that we have today? Our next eventualist joining the conversation is Hannah Van Alstine Srsen, a fellow Hannah, of course. Hannah is a marketing manager at Augeo Experience, a global experiential marketing agency where she leads marketing for the experience division.
Hannah turns performance data, market research, and competitive insight into clear positioning, thought leadership, and content that drives growth.
In this episode, Hannah is going to help us explore what it really means to manage up, from building credibility and navigating feedback to aligning priorities and influencing decisions. The Eventualists will unpack how professionals can work more effectively with senior leadership. Hannah, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. I'm honored to be on today. Excited for this conversation. I think it's one that we all talk about a lot as kind of eventualists in these roles, especially being the youngest on some of our teams. So excited to dive in.
I know that you've seen some of our Eventualist episodes before, so I'm sure you're expecting this first question coming up. But tell us, how do you define yourself as an Eventualist?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think when I first heard this term eventualist on the first episode of the show, which was highly anticipated, by the way, I really like that the term kind of takes the pressure off, because I feel like so much of our early career life is feeling like you should already have it all figured out, and that there's this senior version of yourself that you feel like you should be kind of performing into. But I think by calling yourself an eventualist, it kind of gives you the permission to still be developing and becoming, and to keep exploring and figuring out what exactly your path will be and what you're really passionate about. And I think especially in our industry, as we know, there's so many paths that you can kind of take with this. And so I'm someone that's always said, I really want my role to be dynamic. I want to be doing something different every day. And I think we probably offer that in this industry more than almost any other, just because you do wear so many hats. And so I think being able to kind of have that flexibility and that ability to really just explore all the different pieces and find what it is that you really love, and lean into that and know that you have the time to still do that. I think that's what the term really means to me and how it resonates as well.
I love what you said. Know that you have the time to still do that because we do put so much pressure on ourselves. We feel one thing I say to myself all the time is, oh, I'm so behind. Like, I'm so behind in life. I'm comparing myself to friends who are getting married or buying houses. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like, what am I doing wrong? And I love that we we have all the time that we allow ourselves to take. So, Hannah, that was a great perspective that you shared there. I know we mentioned one of the things we wanted to talk to you about today is this concept of quote unquote managing up, which can sometimes feel like one of those workplace buzzwords everyone uses differently. Some people immediately think of office politics, networking maybe for the wrong reasons, trying to impress leadership. Managing up can get a negative connotation sometimes, but in reality, it's about growing in your role and learning those leadership skills, right? So, how do you define managing up in simple terms, and what do you think people often misunderstand about that concept?
Yeah, that's a really great question. I think for me, managing up is really a discipline of clarity and clarity across multiple different aspects. So, clarity on priorities, and how you're communicating, and I think about your own trajectory as a leader. So, I think it's about making things easier for leadership and your team as a whole, and then really just ensuring that everyone's able to move faster and make better decisions by staying one step ahead. But as you mentioned, I think when we think of the term office politics, it gets that bad rap. And it definitely does. I understand why it gets that, right? Because nobody wants to be seen as kind of the person that's sucking up or kind of being the yes person that's just affirming what everyone says. But I think what people misunderstand about it is that it's about being that yes person or that agreeable person all the time. But I think the people that are truly masterful at managing up are the ones that are lean into really being that thought partner. And that can mean adding tension to some of those conversations, pushing back respectfully, bringing a different angle. So it's actually not about agreeing all the time, but kind of bringing that value in that fresh perspective or pushing back on ideas that are currently out there.
And I love that. And I think one of the most important things is pushing back sometimes. And I think for a lot of our more, people that are coming into the industry for the first time and finally having these conversations with leadership, especially with the stereotypes that come with Gen Z, we don't want to seem entitled. We don't want to seem like we're pushing things too hard, right? So, what would you say? How would you know when it's okay to start pushing back to senior leadership?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I am someone that likes to kind of ease into it first. I will be very transparent and say, like, coming into this role, especially, my nature is not to kind of be the loudest one in the room, step in, throw out all of my ideas. Not that there's anything wrong with that. But I think it served me well in this space by really taking a step back and doing what I call like a listening tour almost. So having one-on-one meetings with each senior leader, meeting with senior leaders in different groups, different maybe weekly meetings, and seeing kind of the lay of the land and how everyone interacts with each other, when it's maybe appropriate to push back, when things need to keep moving. And then once you kind of lay the groundwork there and have a better understanding of what that dynamic is like, I think then finding strategic ways that feel comfortable to you at first to start adding an idea. And maybe it's the way you phrase it. So saying like, here's an idea or something I thought of. And then as you get more confident, making that clear recommendation and having the ability to back it up. But I think by stepping back first and just leading with curiosity, asking questions, all those things, it can make it a lot easier to step in, because it's definitely something that can be scary to do.
What's really important that you mentioned there as well is that you have to listen first, understand everything that they're trying to say, take that information, and then almost like suggest how you would make it better, instead of making it just an outright declaration of, actually, no, I think that this is the way. More just sort of dropping hints, right? And maybe giving a good couple of ideas first. And then once you sort of get your feet in the conversation, then you can start pushing towards backing up your ideas even more. Because I don't think anyone jumps in with, senior leadership straight away and goes, right, I appreciate everything you've just said, but I actually have something that would work way better. That's not normally what goes down well, right? So I think that's really important. And I've never heard of doing a listening tour before. So I actually might consider booking in a cheeky listening tour myself.
Yeah, I love the concept of a listening tour. And I think it's something that, just thinking about the team that I work with at meetings today, we all have such different personalities and bring so many different ideas to the table. And how we all communicate is so different. And I wouldn't have known the best way to approach certain conversations with my colleagues if I didn't sit back the first couple of months and really get to understand how they function as an employee and who they are as a person and the types of the way to go about communicating with them, right? Like there are some people on my team who I know now I could just be like, hey, I need this and I don't like this idea. And they're like, fine with it. And we'll run and we'll roll with it. But there are other people on my team where I know maybe the delivery has to be a little softer. And I would not have gotten that full understanding of how to communicate best, especially as a younger employee with my team, if not for taking a pause and really making sure I understood the team dynamics before I kind of inserted myself into them. And I think that's something that traditionally is like common in the industry. We're very apprenticeship driven, and younger professionals learn a lot from people who have decades of experience. We're always pushing for mentorship, but that takes a lot of patience too. And I think emerging professionals see so much potential for growth and new kind of tactics or changes we can make in the industry that we want to just shout from the rooftops, but we have to kind of rein ourselves in. So, Hannah, how can emerging professionals honor that experience of mentorship and learning from senior leaders while still bringing fresh ideas and perspectives to the table in ways that don't feel like they're just waiting for their turn?
Absolutely. I think the most important piece when honoring experience is taking the time to build those relationships. So honestly, I think the listening tours can be a great strategy. I also think coffee chats can be really important. And in my role, I'm 100% remote. And so I think you have to be even more intentional in our generation in roles where you're hybrid or remote to form those relationships, because it's not as easy as those passing hallway comments or grabbing a coffee at like the local shop down the street maybe. So really carving out that time to get to know people, and especially senior leaders, as people first, because I think it's so mutually beneficial. I know for me coming in, I saw senior leaders as these incredibly motivated and accomplished and incredible individuals. And so it's really hard to remember that they are a human. They have families and lives at home and all these other pieces. So really taking the time to get to know them, get to know their kids' names, their dogs' names, where they live, all those things, so that you can build that rapport, I think is really crucial. And then I think once you have that, and then they have that information about you as well, it makes it a lot easier to then bring those fresh ideas, because they know that you're coming from a great place and you just have that foundation of that relationship that you've built to go off of.
They see you as a human and not as someone who's like attacking them or coming for their job, right?
Exactly. Yeah, 100%. And I also think with that question as well, instead, kind of like what you were saying, Taylor, instead of just suggesting that something should change, I think trying to understand and being really intentional about why it's done that way. And so when you do suggest something new, acknowledging how it's been done, that you see that pattern. And I think that just helps to build kind of that credibility and that trust that you're taking the time to really seek to understand. And then from there, offering a suggestion and then the why behind it. And how it's going to lead to a better outcome down the line.
And I want to touch on something that you said about rapport earlier. And we touched base on this like a while ago. But one of the things that I've struggled with communicating with senior leadership is just the very big change that they have in communication style. Now, I know that there's a place for professionalism or being direct, and sometimes there's a place for, checking in on like, how's your weekend? But I'm not afraid to admit that I'm someone that loves to put a smiley face in an email, or say thank you 1,000 times when someone's done something for me, or put please over and over again. I'd hate to be a burden, that kind of thing. The communication style that senior leaders have is often very different. And I think sometimes we can almost overthink that, right? Where it comes across like, have I done something wrong? Are they mad at me? Like, I thought we were friends. I don't know, that kind of thing. So I just wanted to ask you, when those situations occur, how do you How do you handle that? How have you learned to sort of not take that personally and adjust to a typical senior leader's communication style?
Yeah, absolutely. I think in meeting with senior leaders initially and getting to know them, first understanding, which you've both kind of alluded to, what their communication style is, I think is so key, because that was something that I definitely skipped at the beginning. And so when I would get a Teams chat specifically, because we're a Teams organization, where it would be just like a one-line response with a period to me, and I feel like for a lot of us in Gen Z, like if I were to get a text like that, I only get it like from my dad or if someone's angry at me. And so quickly realizing that, okay, let's do a quick moment, take a moment to pause here. They are truly just probably in the middle of a meeting. Like I can see on Teams that it's red. That means they're busy, they're working. So that's honestly, they're taking time out of that busy schedule to respond to me. And that's what they're able to reply with. So knowing that up front, but also taking the time up front to ask them that, like, what is your preferred communication style? Is it me sending a Teams message, or is that going to be distracting in your workday? Would you prefer this in an email? And then I think just learning as well that it's, and understanding it's not just you. So like being on an email chain and seeing like, okay, this is the response across, if anyone reaches out to them, right? It's not just me. But I think having those conversations up front of like, what is the best way? What's the preferred way for me to communicate with you? And then sharing that for yourself as well. And I think taking the initiative to say, like, for me, if you're going to send something that is longer than a few bullets, please send it as an email, because I'm going to mark it as unread at the top of my box and you'll get a quick response. So taking the time to have those conversations. But I think that's definitely something I've noticed, that a generation gap between our generation and others, in how we deliver some of that information, especially via quick chats.
Sure. And I love that you pointed out as well that you very often get this sort of text from your dad. It's like just getting the thumbs up on a message as well, right? They're like, oh, that's so cool.
Lucky to get that.
Yeah, exactly. Lucky to get that. But that's just how they communicate. And like you're saying, I think once you have that conversation, all of a sudden you look at it through a different lens. You start not taking it personally and realizing actually that's what's most efficient to them. And that's how we all communicate with each other in that sense. I think that, you know, when you start sort of at the very beginning of your career, a lot of the work you're doing is more executional, right? So it's not always common that you're having a lot of conversations direct with your senior leaders within your company. So sort of having these conversations and these strategic conversations becomes a newer thing. So how can managing up help someone become seen not just as an executor anymore, but actually as a strategic problem solver? And then what role does managing up play in actually making sure that leaders understand your contributions and what you can offer to strategy instead of just execution?
Yeah, another really great question. I feel like that's something that I'm actively working through in my role, because I feel like no matter how high up you get in leadership, there's always going to be a role that execution will play. But I do think, obviously, we all want to be seen, right, as the strategic problem solver and be a part of those larger, more strategic conversations. But I think having the confidence to bring your authentic point of view is really the key here, which sounds really easy to just bring that. But I'm sure we all know, whether it be a virtual call or in a meeting room, doing that in a room of senior leaders where you're maybe the only one that has that manager title, or that's in your 20s or whatever that may be. I think having the confidence to do that, as we've said, takes time and takes practice to kind of build up. So I think it's the switch kind of comes from just sharing your ideas and kind of saying like, oh, here's a suggestion, but what do you think we should do? But having the confidence to really say, here's my clear recommendation. Here's why I think it's going to work, like explicitly sharing your rationale so that they can see your thinking, and then still pausing for feedback. So never just saying a statement and assuming it's right, but leading confidently with that recommendation and what you think the next step should be, and then waiting for feedback versus asking for that for them. I think for me, that's what's gotten me in those conversations and in those rooms that I really want to be in.
I 100% agree with that. Confidence is key, and I am a firm believer in fake it till you make it. Even if you don't have that confidence, hold your head up, shoulders back, do that power pose, Wonder Woman, and it does really make a difference. But you mentioned in our pre-interview being a recovering people pleaser like myself. I'm a recovering people pleaser. I'm a current people pleaser. That's just who I am as an individual, and I am definitely learning how to be less of an echo chamber for leadership, which I think is something that's very easy to become as a new hire, a young professional, because you do have all these ideas, but you see all these senior leaders around you brainstorming and collaborating and sharing their thoughts, and you don't know half the words that they're saying because they're these crazy acronyms or like big sales terms that I'm like, I don't know what that means. And it's very easy for me to go back into my shell of being a little bit of a people pleaser. So, from a different perspective, I guess, when it comes to building that confidence, but also making sure that your leaders and other colleagues of yours don't see you as someone to just go to who's just going to say yes and agree with them no matter what. Why is it important to respectfully challenge those ideas, and how can professionals get comfortable doing that?
Yeah, I think similar to what you said, I was always someone and still struggle with it to this day that would say yes to everything, because I think I was just taught through school and through um, internships and all those pieces that being the person that would step up to the plate was the right thing to do. And so just always saying yes, yes, yes. So I kind of prided myself on the more I could take on, I must be doing really well, right? Like it's crazy that I can do these 75 things, but I quickly realized in this role that the more I took on, I wasn't showing up on each of those tasks the way I wanted to, right? Because you can't do everything well. And so I think that quote, like, playing that game with myself to see how much I could do quickly made me realize I wasn't able to prioritize, right? And I think the key to really start to get comfortable in this space is to realize, like, what are those key priorities. I think to get comfortable challenging senior leadership, I truly think you have to just start by starting. And I know we've said, as scary as it sounds, when you're in that room and maybe it feels like something that's not fully natural to you, I think you just have to challenge yourself to speak up. And even if it's a point that maybe doesn't sound like the most thought-provoking thing or the smartest thing you've ever said, just by saying something, I think senior leadership will notice that and recognize that and see you as someone that's willing to kind of take that risk and that leap. And I think we'll say every single time you do it, I think it makes it a little bit easier to do it next time. I also think that can be a really clear way to kind of show your value and your contribution to your team, because saying something that maybe adds a little bit of tension to the conversation or posing it as a question too, I think that's a strategy I take. I'll listen to what's being said in the room and then throw in a question that makes people think about it a little bit differently. It also shows your leadership and your stakeholders that you're willing to add value in that space and you're willing to be more than maybe just that echo chamber, like you said, Taylor, of just affirming, because at the end of the day, that isn't really moving the needle or changing the outcome if you're just repeating what's already being said. But by throwing in an idea, even if you don't think it's, again, like the most revolutionary thing, it might shake up the room, and you never know where that will lead and how that will change the conversation or the outcome.
I love what you said about positioning your idea as a question that makes them think about it. And it makes them think, oh, like maybe not that you're giving them credit for your idea, but they're more likely to maybe agree with you because they're coming to that idea on their own in a way with your push and guidance. And I think that's super, super smart of you. I am taking note of that myself. Thank you very much.
Hannah, I want to link back to something that we were talking about earlier, actually, and that's that senior leaders are also still human, right? Like, we put them on this pedestal, but once upon a time, they were eventualists themselves and they were coming into this job for the first time. And something that I try and say to people when, they say I'm too scared to speak up about something at work, or I feel like I'm just going to get turned down and I don't want to seem like an idiot. I think senior leaders have a really great level of respect for emerging professionals that take that risk. They've been in those shoes. They know that that's a brave thing to do, and that, you're sort of putting yourself out there when you give those suggestions. And actually, I think that they have a lot of respect for their younger team members that start to do that. And then also, you're showing your potential in the same breath, right? Like, that's going back to a question we asked earlier as well about showing your strategic leadership, your strategic thinking there, and that you can do more than just execute. And by doing what you said, asking a good question, you're already showing them how you're thinking differently than someone that's just saying yes. So I love that. I want to know, have you ever had a moment where you saw a better way to do something? Maybe, I don't know, you've had like a team meeting and you thought, oh, actually, I think it'd be better if we did it like this. And did you feel hesitant to speak up because of the senior people were involved? And if so, how did you sort of motivate yourself to get over that and say something?
Yeah, I can think of a lot of examples with this because I've been lucky enough to be in a lot of these conversations. And I also think it can be challenging when you're working cross-functionally and on some of the bigger projects as well. So thinking about our kind of recent things going on at Augeo Experience, we recently launched our new website, which, as you can imagine, lots of opinions across the board, as there should be. But I think with that, being kind of in the room with all of those senior leaders and all of those voices, kind of being the marketing manager, I quickly had to kind of find what my niche or my space would be in that space. And I also was taking on almost a project management role. So quite literally my job was to hear all of those voices, synthesize everything, put it into next steps and action items and timelines, and then also weigh in with my own opinion as the person leading the marketing piece. So I think for me, in that role, especially working cross-functionally, a phrase that I started using very often in all of those meetings, as I'm sure they would tell you, is help me understand. And so when people were saying something that maybe I quite literally didn't understand or just wanted them to expand on, or was seeing that like half of the room maybe wasn't fully aligned with, giving them the opportunity to elaborate on what they're truly meaning and get to the root of that thinking was really helpful. And then I think it also gave me the opportunity, if I had maybe a rebuttal or a different idea, it gave me room to kind of raise my point without it feeling like a challenge. And so that was advice that I got from a previous manager that I had a few years ago that was just saying, like, always lead with this. It comes across really well. And I think that that landed really well. And then I also think in that kind of setting that if there is something that you want to bring up and that you're really hesitant to, maybe in front of the full group, maybe you feel like you lack the context on a piece of that, I think scheduling a follow-up too, maybe like one-on-one or one-on-two with the people that could help you better understand could also be really helpful. Because then you're not having to do it in that space and you're showing that you care about it, you want to be involved here, but you're taking the time to understand next steps and be in that conversation in a slightly different way.
I think taking the time that you need to process all those thoughts and come back to the conversation feeling confident and prepared, or like you have a better understanding of what's going on and are able to share your thoughts in that way, is by far the most important thing. If you do have the opportunity to do that, I definitely recommend. I would do it too. But the reality is, in this events industry, it can be very stressful, very fast moving environments where decisions have to be made quickly. You don't always have that time to take a step back from it, process it, sleep on it, come back with a new set of eyes in the morning. So how does managing up change when you are in the middle of an event or something that's happening in the moment and there really is no time for that lengthy discussion or a follow-up call to get more of an explanation there?
Yeah, I think that's kind of the real test. And I'm definitely someone that, as you said, Taylor, values the opportunity to take a step back, look at things again from a new perspective. But also, as we all know, the reality in this industry is 99% of the time, I don't get to do that. So I think when you're in that moment, that stressful events, tensions are high, all of those pieces, I truly think it's going back to the foundation of those relationships, number one, and then also those working styles conversations. I think that's what it comes back to, because in the moment especially with senior leaders, you're not going to be able to ask them how they want to be receiving information. I think you need to know exactly what's going to work, especially when you're on site, whether it be a phone call, a Teams message, email, like what are they checking? That's crucial to know. But then also, like, do they want the full picture in 30 seconds with all the context, or do they just want that headline? Like, if something's on fire, they don't need your rationale. You just need to tell them, like, give the directive based on what you know, take the initiative, be like, here's what we're going to do, and we're just going to run with it, and just have the confidence to do that, because there's not another option sometimes.
Taking the initiative is a huge one. And I think senior leaders, and in fact, all of us, we all really appreciate when someone's able to just take some initiative, right? And it's interesting, I did something a few years ago. You've probably heard of something similar, but the one that I did was called Colorworks, and it was all about how different communication styles work differently across the board, right? So you have like your color red, which just wants the headlines, like you were saying, Hannah, like super direct. And then you've got your blues that are more detail orientated, like they want everything written out in the email so they completely understand your rationale. Then you've got your yellows who are just supportive and happy to be there, your hype woman, your yes woman. And then you've got your greens who are like, we're a team, like we're all in this together, like that kind of thing. So I think, like you're saying, it's so important to know that about who you're talking to first before you're in that situation. Because when you're on site, there's not much time to figure that out. And I think I am very lucky that I know with my senior leadership, it is always give me that headline first. If the building's on fire, let's just, the building's on fire, let's get out. And then we can talk about how it happened, right? And I think in events, you have to be thinking on your feet like that all the time. So no, I love that. Out of curiosity, Hannah, I want to know, because I'm like in a position now where my team, I've started managing down as well. But that means that I'm witnessing my team manage up towards me. So I've been thinking about my own communication style and how I work. I want to know, what's yours? What do you prefer? Are you a headline girl? Do you want all the details?
Yeah, so I think I am a details girl for sure. I am someone that is very analytical, like to know all the things. When I'm told something, I'm always in the background using Claude or whatever AI tool to find out more about it. But I think this role specifically has definitely pushed me to try to be more of that headlines girl, because I feel like as I continue to advance and grow in my career, I'll get to the point where I simply don't have the time to know all the details about everything. So I think details girl if it works, but trying to transition myself into being okay with the headline sometimes.
I need to
So
be okay with the headlines sometimes too. That's really tough. I'm a journalist, so I want all the details. It's my job to get them all. And I'm so nosy, which is why I went into this industry. I will ask all the questions. And if I don't have the answers, I literally, like, I can't handle that. I am the type of person that I'm like, I will find them if you don't tell me. I'm going to go investigate and get the answers. So I think that's something I need to practice more, is not needing all the details, even though the details need me. I think they're calling to me. I have to get them all the time. Hannah, what about you?
Oh my gosh. I I would say I fall somewhere in the middle. I think when it comes to my team, I'm very direct, or I appreciate them being direct with me. But then when it comes to me with senior leadership, I tend to give them a lot of the details, which is hard because it needs to be the other way around. I need to be more direct with senior leadership, and I need to be asking my team for more of the details. But I think this is all something that you continue to learn and develop. And I'm totally new to this and to having a team that I manage, and I love it. It's great. And I love learning all the new challenges and such. But it is about learning their communication styles as well. So I know I've got one on my team who is more direct and appreciates that, and then another who loves giving me all of the details, which is perfect because that's a great skill for that execution role, right? So I would say it varies on a day to day, but you know me anyway. I'm just laughing and bubbling and jumping around all over the place.
100%. And I love what you said about being direct as well, because I feel like you can be direct in kind of both of those scenarios. But I think that's a huge piece, especially being Gen Z, as we've said, and growing in your career in this way of being able to take that direct feedback, however you're getting it, and really seeing that as a gift. I feel like that's something I always have heard growing up is feedback is a gift. It's an opportunity. You should take it. But that's something that's taken me so long to realize. But I feel like when you make that switch, and for me, it literally just happened. I feel like one day I got feedback from a manager. I was like, this is actually incredibly helpful. This is going to help me grow and progress to that next level. I want to welcome this. And like, I feel lucky that I'm being given this. They're taking the time out of their day to do this. And now I feel like I'm so much better for it. Because in the past, I think it's really easy to take that personally. So trying to just remember that piece as well, I think has been hugely helpful in this journey of managing up.
This is kind of unrelated. I don't know if either one of you, Hannah, Elston, I don't know if it's even available in the UK, but there is a TV show on Netflix called America's Sweethearts. It's all about the Dallas Cowboy cheerleaders. They just came out with a season 3, and I know you're like, why is she talking about this? But I was watching an episode last night, and the coaches were talking. They're going through like tryouts, as it's harder to get into the Dallas Cowboy cheerleaders than it is to get into some Ivy League schools. It's like impossible to get through those auditions sometimes. And beforehand, in the past seasons, the coaches were very much keeping the feedback, especially the negative feedback, to themselves, going back into a private room, analyzing all the notes they took, then coming out and making cuts with the girls. And they'd be like, what did I do wrong? They just didn't like me. Like, maybe I'm not. It's all about looks too, right? They're like beating themselves up for like what they look like and how they're dancing, what they're acting like. And in this next season that just came out, the coaches are talking about how they're like, they didn't realize how important the feedback was and how much of an effect it would make on the girls in a positive way. They were afraid to hurt their feelings, but these girls are craving it so that they have better clarity and understanding of what they could do to improve. And I just thought it was such a great episode. Anyone watching or listening, go watch America's Sweethearts on Netflix. But especially for senior leaders who maybe don't always know how to give that feedback. Like, now she's got her phone and she's like watching the girls and she's like, this girl just did something really great, or this girl just did this and I need to remind her to point her toes in her kicks next time, or something like that. And seeing that episode, I was just like, wow, this could be like very eye-opening for a lot of senior leaders, and also for young professionals who are maybe afraid of that feedback, to see how much it helped them improve and how the girls felt a better understanding of who they were and the job that they were doing. I just had to throw that little plug in there because it did feel very timely. And I just thought, outside of the industry, this is something everyone relates to. We could all use this feedback.
Taylor, I want to pull up on something there as well, because I think it's really important. When you get feedback, it doesn't mean that what you're doing currently isn't good enough or isn't good. It is simply a way to give you something to strive towards to be even better, which is what a lot of us want to do, right? That's how we advance in our careers. That's how we elevate our experiences. And I remember when I started at ELX, I mean, these are incredible senior leaders in the events industry. Every year we have to raise that bar, and it gets harder and harder. And when I first started getting that feedback, it was a little bit like, oh, okay, like I thought it went really well. There seemed to be a lot of EBIs, or even better ifs, instead of like what went well. And I was like, oh, okay. But now I love that. One of my favorite things we do is the debrief meeting afterwards, where it's like, right, okay, what was the feedback we got from people? How are we going to make it even better next time? And knowing that that doesn't make what I did or what I am doing any less valuable or any less great than it actually was. And I think that's such an important piece as you're growing within your career, is to not take feedback personally and see it as opportunity, because that's really what it is.
And I also think, to that point as well, and I was also watching the DCC show last night, funnily enough, Taylor, but if someone's taking the time to, like I said, to give you that feedback, they want you to actively be better. So even in that show, the girls that they were giving that feedback to were the girls that they wanted to come back the next year and try again, because they saw their potential and wanted them to be on that team. So I think I'm lucky too, Hannah, in my role with the senior leadership that I have. I've talked to them about my trajectory. What could my path look like? All of these pieces. So when I get that from them, I know that it's because they see the potential in me to grow and to become senior leadership, hopefully one day, right? Like, that's the goal for all of us. But also with our events and experiences, the attendee feedback that we get is the most valuable thing that we have. And we're constantly trying to find new ways to collect that and get better feedback and more information so that we can improve on things. So I love kind of that reframe that you gave just then.
Thank you. And I feel like that ties in quite nicely to what I wanted to ask you next, Hannah, because if there's just one thing that you wish every young professional understood about working with senior leaders and managing up, what would it be?
That's a hard question, but a good one. I think I'll kind of cheat and answer it in two ways. So I think the first thing would be just showing your initiative and showing your passion, and that you want to be a part of those conversations. I think a lot of times it's really easy to assume that, oh, they know I want to be in this strategy conversation or this brainstorm for this thing, but you truly do just have to be your own biggest advocate and volunteer to be there. Ask if you can be a fly on the wall. Maybe for some of those, when I was starting out, I said, I'm happy to be here and listen because of X reason. And also I'll take notes, like offer that up as an option to kind of get in the room. And then I think the second piece would be, once you are in the role where you are starting to manage up, stop being the yes person and have the confidence to say yes to fewer things and execute on the things that you're doing better. So take the time to really prioritize, find what those key priorities are, and make sure that those are the pieces that you're putting all of your energy behind, because otherwise your energy is going to be scattered around everywhere and you're not going to be able to show up the way that you want to.
The truth is, our priorities are always constantly shifting, and that's becoming increasingly common today. I think there's less jobs out there and more responsibilities on the jobs that do exist, right? We're expected to do so much, and then things are changing so quickly, especially with AI. The way that I do my job today looks totally different than how I did my job last year. The responsibilities I have are totally different. And I'm managing up more now. It's just a reality. And one of the things that I struggle with is prioritizing my tasks and my work above being there for everyone else, kind of in that way. So, how can employees manage up effectively while still protecting their own productivity and focus? And this is a last minute question that we have, but I'm curious about it because it's something I personally am struggling with. So, this is my own little Taylor's therapy session. What advice do you have for me?
Yeah, I know. I love that question because that's been something that I also have struggled with. And I think especially in a remote environment too, where you just have a calendar that's literally open to the week for anyone to put time on at any given time. I think some of the best advice that I've gotten from my senior leaders, and something that we kind of do as a culture, it's truly, I feel like, a part of our team, is taking the initiative to block your time and protect your space. So for me, like the fourth Friday of every month, I have my afternoons blocked. I get up out of my apartment, I go to a coffee shop, and that is my strategic thinking and planning time for my priorities for the next quarter. And so I think it sounds, again, it's one of those things, oh, that sounds easy to do, but truly protecting that time and saying no to meetings in that space is a challenge. And I think just communicating that with your team members and saying, like, this is my protected time, owning that and keeping it is huge. And then even like for meeting prep or other pieces too, taking the 15 to 20 minutes before and just blocking that time on your calendar, I think ensures that you're giving yourself the time and the space you need to prepare for those pieces, and then still being able to show up for your team the rest of the time when you're not blocked.
That is the hardest thing to do, is block that. I'll put that time in my calendar, and then someone's like, I can only meet now. And I'm like, well, I guess I'll prioritize you because I feel bad and don't know how to say no. But that is something that I am practicing. Got to do more. So we're gonna put that into action again this next couple of weeks. Hannah, I'll let you know how it goes.
Oh my God. And Taylor, I was just thinking, so I've been the same. I've always been like, yes, I understand the importance of blocking in my calendar. Like, I'll do that, and then something else will come up and I'll be like, oh, well, that can be moved. Never mind. And something happened last week that has honestly changed that for me, probably forever. I was supposed to attend an event in London, but there was tube strikes. It was like really hard to get there. So I had it blocked out in my diary for the whole day so that I wouldn't, book any meetings, but then I couldn't go. So I obviously cancelled that out of my calendar, and I was like, oh my God, I don't have a single call all day. What on earth? This is amazing. And I got so much done. I got so many slides. We're coming up to our biggest event of the year at the moment. So having a full day to be able to just talk with my team and actually get on executing some things, I got so much ticked off my list, and I still had time to think strategically and think of more things that we could do. That never ever happens. So because I've been forced into that situation where I had blocked time and then got it back, I'm going to do that at least once a month. Honestly, I've never felt so productive. So I'm reinforcing Hannah's message to you right now. Block time in your calendar. It's going to change the game.
Okay, I'll do it right after we finish recording. I'm gonna go block it off, and I gotta. It sounds life changing. So I'm next. We'll see what happens. Okay, last question for you today, Hannah. It's a big one. So, but I know you're ready for it. How much of successful managing up comes down to emotional intelligence? And what are some signs that someone is developing that emotional intelligence, self-awareness, those interpersonal skills needed to build trust with leadership and also with yourself?
Yeah, 100%. I honestly feel like most of managing up is honestly tied to emotional intelligence. I think that kind of is the root of the entire thing. So I think there's kind of three layers to it. And so the first would be being able to read your leaders, which I know we've talked about, but understanding their communication styles, understanding that their tone in an email, if it comes across as a little bit sharp, it's just them being efficient, understanding all of those pieces so that you don't get hung up on that. I think the second one is really being able to read yourself and manage your emotions. So as we know in events, things move very quickly, things go sideways constantly. And so being able to kind of be the calm in the storm actually matters a lot, because being able to have kind of that grounding energy, I think, sets the tone and can help senior leaders and kind of everyone on site just feel a little bit more at peace when everything's going crazy. And then I think the third one is really being able to read the room. So timing is kind of everything. Know when it's okay and encourage to push back. Know when to hold. Know when to bring something up in a larger meeting or larger forum. And then when it's better to schedule maybe a one-on-one to bring it up privately. And I think that just comes with time and learning your culture and your specific leaders, but really just capitalizing on that timing.
Perfect way to sum up everything we talked about today, if you ask me. 1, 2, 3.
Well, I think with that summary in mind, thank you so much for joining us for the episode today. It has been amazing. And if anything, I've also learned now that when I email you, I need to give you lots of details. So that's a key takeaway for me. But thank you so much for joining us. I just know that so many of our listeners are going to find this conversation incredibly valuable. And I know you have such a busy schedule. So thank you so much for taking the time.
Thank you for having me. It's been an honor to be here.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Eventualists and diving into real questions and experiences shared by us and our listeners. For more Eventualists content, follow Meetings Today's social media platforms and eventualists.podcast on Instagram.
Whether it's a bold question, an anonymous confession, or a candid conversation with a courageous podcast guest, the Eventualists are here to unpack it, openly, honestly, and without judgment, to help teach emerging leaders lessons they will find useful in their careers eventually. We're your co-hosts, Taylor Smith
and Hannah Elston. This episode was produced by Meetings Today's Maddie Willis. If you liked this conversation, add to it. Email Maddie at eventualist.podcast@gmail.com.
New episodes of Eventualists will air every third Thursday of the month. Thanks for tuning in. We look forward to sharing more experiences and conversations with you eventually.